to end this.
El secretario de Estado estadounidense, Antony Blinken, haciendo balance de esos 4 años al frente de la OTAN, de la parte que le corresponde a Washington en el mandato de Joe Biden. Y ahora miramos hacia Moscú con el presidente ruso Vladimir Putin.
And definitely discuss key trends on the global markets and in the Russian economy. And how things stand in the Russian economy will be the starting point of my speech. You know that back in 2022, our businessmen, companies, entire sectors faced formidable challenges because of actions of, to put it mildly, some of the countries of their leading elites and their leaderships. And those countries proved to be unreliable partners. And actually, many of the production and supply chains suffered a blow or were destroyed altogether. Those were the cooperation ties that had been established for decades prior to that. And we hear quite often in the political and military and economic sphere that those countries wanted to inflict a strategic defeat to Russia, including on the economic and technology fronts, to dramatically weaken our industry, finance and services, creating insurmountable shortage of goods at our market, destabilizing the labor market and bringing down the living standards of our people. Obviously, those malign designs failed. After a difficult period, Russian economy not only fully recovered, but now it's going through qualitative structural change, which is important. And probably this is the most important thing and outcome of our work in the economy over the past 2 to 3 years. We've been unlocking technology, industrial and logistical potential, and we have been strengthening ties with prospective partners. Last year, Russia's GDP was up by 3.6%. This is common knowledge. And over January to October this year, it increased by 4.1%. And the bulk of the growth was in the processing sectors with high added value. Over the 10 months, our processing industry gained more than 8%, well, specifically 8.1%. Besides, advanced pace of growth is witnessed in automobile production and machine engineering, high-tech sectors with high added value and high-skilled jobs are seeing an inflow of manpower. In September, the number of employed workers in the IT sector increased by 8.1% versus last year. And in processing industry, there was a 3.9% growth. Structural changes on the labor market are evidenced by the lowering unemployment in our regions where it traditionally was high before. Also, there is a growth of employment among youths below 25 years of age. We know this is an issue in many countries of the world. We also have this, or rather we had it before. And now the level of unemployment among such youths is below 9%, although at certain periods of times it was at 20 or even more percent, 25% in some of the regions of our country. By and large, Russia has a record low unemployment of 2.3% only, compared to the majority of leading economies and emerging economies. This is the minimum. To give an example, in many European nations, it's 7% and above, and in this country, the number is just slightly over 2%. In Italy, it's 7.6%. In France, it's 7.3%. In Canada, slightly lower, 5.4%. In Greece, it's 11%. In Brazil, it stands at 8%. In Sweden, 7.6%. The growth of our economy positively impacts the budget system. Over January to October, the surplus of consolidated budget of our country and the extra budgetary funds was at 2.5 trillion rubles. And I'd like to emphasize I know here many people are knowledgeable of what I'm talking about. The expenditure amounted for less than 35% of GDP, which matches the levels of 2021, which is a testimony of the fact that the government and the central bank pursue well-balanced policies. Well, there's an objective rise on some of the budget items. Still, we do not overbloat the public expenditure. We want to raise their efficiency, and we pursue well-conceived approach in the budget sphere. Our goal to maintain this sustained long-term economic growth, guaranteeing high quality, intensive growth rates in the real sector with the help of modernization and of production facilities and improving the labor productivity. At the same time, it is important to avoid tilts in key macroeconomic parameters and disequilibrium in some of the sectors. Definitely, we also need to contain inflation. And now, you know, it is at quite high a level compared with other countries. It's 8.8% in annualized terms. In order to attain positive results, we need concerted joint action by the government and the Bank of Russia. I emphasize this is not a call, a wish. This is a direct guide to action, and the colleagues from the central bank and the government know that quite well, and they coordinate between themselves. We need definitely to have well thought over manner of dealing with all the toolkit to fight inflation without any structural excesses, including the risks of greater gaps in incomes of people and income base reduction among our regions. I already said that an overarching response to the challenge of inflation would be in raising the supply of goods and services at the market so that it should meet the domestic demand of our people and our businesses that want to modernize and expand their capabilities to invest in construction and equipment, procurement and development projects. In this regard, I would ask the government to be more specific about the priorities and support measures doled out to different sectors from the federal budget. Also, we should continue the fine-tuning of the regulatory framework in order to lift excessive administrative barriers in order to step up the output of products and enhancement of the technology sovereignty, as well as establishing new manufacturing sites. Yes, we should take into account that the overall context is restraining inflation, and we are pursuing tight fiscal budget policies, and definitely we should see lending policies be attuned respectively. But starting from August, the retail lending portfolio stopped growing, although in the corporate sector, corporate loans portfolio keeps growing, and I needn't say here in this room that this is probably an outcome that we want to attain in order to rein in the inflation. So the corporate lending is still on the rise, which means that the investment plans of companies are being implemented, while in retail lending we are seeing a deceleration, a slowdown. Well, the economic and financial authorities wanted that to happen. I would ask the colleagues to monitor the dynamics, preventing sharp fluctuations and reduction in loan portfolios. Also, such a structure should be in place in terms of duration and sector breakdown and industries breakdown of loan issues, so that we can attain the strategic development goals and guarantee their achievement. It is important to pay heed to the debt burden of companies with state participation of late. We have been talking about that with colleagues. Of late, it has gone up considerably, this burden. Definitely, we should take into account the large-scale investment programs of the state corporations and the social support measures are thereof. I will not delve into detail. The Russian colleagues know what I'm talking about. I have already instructed the government, together with the Bank of Russia, to make decisions to manage the loan portfolios of companies with the state participation, to preclude excessive debt burden and imbalances at the corporate lending segment in prejudice of other sectors or businesses. I'll remind you that for many SMEs that have begun to play a more pronounced role, well, the availability of funds, of lending, of borrowed funds is a key factor of the investment activity, and we have a goal. By 2030, investments should go up by 60% in real terms versus 2020. Well, given all these difficulties, despite them, fixed investments on the part of Russian business has been growing for the third consecutive year, despite all the problems imposed from the outside. Let me cite some of the numbers. In 2022, the increase of investments was at 6.7%. In 2023, it was 9.8%. Over 9 months of the current year, the growth rate is similar, an increase of 8.6%. In order to support the determination of our businesses to invest in development, expand their capabilities and create jobs, we will continue to strengthen the capital market. We will support companies listing at stock markets with their securities. By the end of the decade, the capitalization of the stock market in Russia is to more or less double, to equal 2/3 of the GDP. Let me note that this year only 19 IPOs and SPOs happened. Issuers have been able to raise 102 billion rubles. This is a very good result, an outcome, but country-wise, it's negligible. I reiterate, the Russian capital market should be more active in developing the development projects and funding development projects and structural changes of our economy.
The government, together with the central bank, have to prepare a package of additional stimulating measures for the issues of shares, and if they get listed, it would be more interesting for them. We need to increase the demand for securities, ensuring effective protection of the rights of investors and the necessary information transparency of companies. I'll remind you that we have already given all the necessary instructions, and we need to step up and intensify work on these directions. Distinguished colleagues, what else would I like to pay attention to? Today, mostly small companies are getting listed, while big organizations, leaders in their industries, are not presented at the stock market. It means that the measures of support of issuers must take into account the demands of small business, promising startups, as well as stimulate big organizations to list their shares on the stock market. For instance, we could align subsidies from the state or preferential loans to the entrance to the stock market. And I think that it is justified. And of course, we invite investors from friendly countries to our stock market. As I said many times, Russia is a part of global economy, and we welcome mutual capital flows. At the same time, we focus on internal sources of financing, so that our citizens, retail investors, had an opportunity to invest their money and to profit inside the country. Such contributions, their returns, would be even more attractive than opening bank deposits. Today, according to experts' evaluations, more than 32 million citizens of Russia show interest to buying securities, and the total volume of their assets exceeds 9 trillion rubles. In the last several years, we've made important decisions to ensure the inflow to the market of the so-called long-term money, to expand the number of the corresponding instruments. This year, we launched a program of supporting voluntary long-term savings of citizens, and the contributions to them are insured and co-financed by the state. A tax refund can be received for the money people put there. up to 22nd of November, more than 2,100,000 people participated in the long-term savings program. We have attracted 145 billion rubles, and we have a more ambitious goal, actually. In 2026, the amount of the funds attracted in the context of this program must exceed 1% of GDP, or 2,300 billion rubles. And in the future, it must constantly grow. I'll add that to accumulate funds of citizens this year, we have launched the so-called individual investment accounts of the third type. With their help, people can make long-term investments to implement operations on the stock market and receive tax benefits. I suggest adding more functions to this instrument so that investors could choose an account for crediting dividends on shares recorded on individual investment accounts. So they can use the received income as they wish at any time, which is very important. Such an instrument of regulation will increase the interest of potential investors to working together with the state. I'll point out as well that since the 1st of January 2025, we will launch shared life insurance for citizens. In fact, it combines the principle of classic insurance and investment. When citizen simultaneously invests funds into assets and shares and receives income, at the same time ensures his or her life and health. As we agreed, we need to guarantee a repayment of these funds. We need to envisage state insurance for an amount of 2,008,100 rubles. We also need to suggest measures of tax incentives for, first of all, the tax credits for the contributed amounts. And I ask the government to prepare and to adopt such federal laws. There is a suggestion to create a financial mechanism that will be a family instrument of savings, and all the working members of the family will be able to receive tax refund. Respectively, the amount of money subject to such refund must grow at least up to 1 million rubles a year. And I ask the government, together with the Bank of Russia, to determine the parameters of this mechanism of support of families and to implement this decision. Distinguished colleagues, Russian banking system, stock market are developing dynamically on the basis of modern technologies. Around 3/4 of our adult citizens use mobile phones, internet to transfer money from bank accounts and for other financial services. More than 80% of payments for goods and services in our economy are implemented in a cashless form. At the same time, Bank of Russia gradually introduces digital ruble. We have launched a pilot project and worked on replenishing accounts and transferring digital rubles between individuals and companies. And the project already covers more than 9,000 citizens and 1,200 companies, and their number continues to grow. As we agreed, from the next year, the settlements with the help of digital ruble must be used in the system of federal budget. And from the 1st of July 2025, we'll have this opportunity all over the country. I'll also say I'll dwell on the use of ruble on international settlements. We are continuing creating an infrastructure that would make such operations more convenient for business and will reduce costs. We are going to introduce experimental legal regime so that banks could fine-tune the ways for remote identification of clients without creating risks for anti-money laundering legislation, of course. Moreover, we will use flexible approach for tax registration or for non-residents. This is what already done by our banks when they open accounts for such companies. And I ask the government to speed up the preparation of corresponding documents and the State Duma to ensure their adoption in the nearest months. I'll point out that the level of digitalization of financial services in Russia exceeds the level all over the world, and it confirms the high level technological level of this sphere of national economy. So it's being forward-looking, its ability to set big goals, and it means that it's being proactive. According to experts, one of the main long-term factors of global growth will be the introduction of national digital infrastructure in financial sector. In other jurisdictions like the EU, Australia, and Singapore, they are exploring just separate elements of this infrastructure. And if we're speaking about Russia, we have already established it, and all the elements are working successfully. It's not just a big achievement of our developers and experts. It is also a competitive advantage of national economy and powerful leverage for its development in the modern world. The leadership of Russia in financial technologies allow us to flexibly establish relations with foreign partners and to promote integration projects to benefit from aligning economic potentials of our countries. I'm also speaking about the work on the investment platform that we are implementing with our colleagues in BRICS. We're starting to implement this work. And all our colleagues have agreed that it is very interesting and useful work for everyone that has good prospects. It will be an instrument to support our economies, to ensure financial resources for the countries of the global south and east. The advanced development of information technologies that is being demonstrated by Russia, our cutting-edge solutions in financial sphere, will be a major contribution to the development of this platform, the key of its success. And I'm sure that we'll achieve it. It is necessary to develop international business cooperation, to build up mutual capital investments, and to establish new supply chains. In this regard, I would like to speak about investment climate in Russia. As you know, the World Bank is no longer present in our country, and it means that it cannot evaluate national business environment. But other objective structures can do that. We have the necessary intellectual potential for that. This year, the Agency for Strategic Initiatives evaluated the business climate in Russia and compared the received results with other countries. The agency used the same approach as the World Bank in its new rating. They took into account more than 800 criteria, from opening enterprises to solving problems of insolvency. And the investigation showed that Russia is one of the global leaders of investment climate rating. At the same time, if we're speaking about legal framework and the quality of public services, Russia has outperformed all the countries. If we're speaking about registration of enterprises and property management, we are on the second place. Yes, we need to apply additional efforts in some spheres. We understand it and we see it. The federal government, regions, and business community will apply these efforts. And the government is always working together with the community. I'm speaking about the development of labor relations, facilitating international trade, the rules of international trade, connecting to engineering infrastructure. And we have done a lot, but we need there is work to do. We need to pay attention to certain spheres. And I'm sure that the colleagues will organize systemic work with business, and they will move forward significantly in the nearest future. Distinguished friends, Russia unites efforts of the state, society, and business in strengthening economic sovereignty, in ensuring technological leadership of our country, in developing sustainable, nationally oriented banking system and strong stock market. Of course, we invite foreign partners from all the countries that are interested in such cooperation. Without any doubt, such aspirations will be supported at all the levels of public governance of the Russian Federation. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all the best.
For taken again part in this forum. This is the 15th intervention at our 15th forum. But since this is almost an anniversary for us, it's the 15th forum, and the audience has changed over the years, I would like to take literally a couple of minutes to share with the audience the history of this forum and the history of your participation. It happened way back in 2009, in the midst of the global financial crisis, which was initiated in the United States. As we know, all the dark things come from there. And I talked with Joseph Ackerman, one of the most distinguished investment bankers of Europe, the head of Deutsche Bank, who said, look, Andre, do tell Mr. Putin that a great country cannot exist without a strong investment bank. So I came back to Moscow and I told Mr. Putin, look, we have this great country. We don't have a great investment bank. And Mr. Putin was very quick to respond, and he asked, how can we help? Now, just for you to understand, at the investment market back then, we had foreign banks playing key roles. Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. There were virtually no Russian investment banks. There were some boutique banks, and mostly arranged by foreigners, foreign citizens. I'm referring to Renaissance and others. And they all held various fora for investors. And I said, look, can we invite you to speak at our forum so that you don't speak anywhere else? So Mr. Putin came to us in 2009, 2010, 2011. Then he was elected as president, and we were very concerned that he would not come as president, but he did. And, you know, he contributed a lot to this forum. This is perhaps the most important investment forum that stores interest and attention, not only on the part of investors and financiers in this country, but globally too. And here we have more than 400 representatives from different countries, some 35 countries are represented. Of course, the audience mix has changed dramatically, but I'm confident that Western investors also monitor very closely what we do, and they listen very carefully what Mr. Putin has to say. So we thanked Mr. Ackerman, and in fact, we hijacked his entire staff, more than 100 people. He was pretty concerned at first, but then he took a more moderate approach, and he said that, look, I'm happy that I have contributed to the development of the investment banking in Russia. Indeed, since then, this forum has occupied the leading positions in Russia, and our bank has also solidified its position in the Russian markets. Once again, this forum is 15 years old, and the presentation by Vladimir Putin has always been the keynote speech. And what we treasure most of all is the open dialogue that the president holds with the audience. And the participants normally say, no, look, it's impossible in our countries when the leader of our country would spend an hour entertaining questions from the audience. So that's what we're going to do now, a Q&A session. And Vladimir Putin is ready to take your questions, but we are only limited in terms of time. So please be brief, be succinct, introduce yourselves, state your country, your sector, and I hope that Mr. Putin will be able to and happy to entertain any of your questions. Sector 7, please. Go ahead. You are number 7? Are we asking something? No, that's okay. Okay, number 4, number 7, the bold one. Ah, number 4.
Give me the Pendientes de las palabras del presidente ruso en este foro VTV, hablando sobre la cuestión económica, hablando sobre la economía de Rusia. Decía que hay que evitar una excesiva deuda. También en este caso estaba hablando sobre la derrota estratégica contra Rusia. Dice precisamente el propio Vladimir Putin que los esfuerzos de Occidente para derrotar estratégicamente a Rusia, introduciendo sanciones contra él en medio de la campaña militar en Ucrania, han fracasado. Seguimos escuchando precisamente al presidente ruso.
I use any opportunity to repeat that we never expelled anyone or ousted anyone from our market. It will not be a big secret to say that despite the political pressure, many of the partners, including from Western Europe and the United States, have stayed, chose to stay. Part of these companies continue working as they did. Approximately half of them. Another part have transferred the management to entities and individuals that they control, and only a quarter left, and some of them are still leaving the Russian economy, including major, biggest German companies. I would not say that because of the decoupling of ties with Russia, only because of decoupling ties of Russia, the German economy is going through hard times, but actually this breakup of ties plays a significant role in the worsening situation. It's not only because the Germans and other Europeans cannot now receive stable supplies of Russian energy at affordable prices, although it is very important, but also there are other factors coming into play. They cannot sell their goods at our market and supply spare parts to the enterprises and manufacturing sites established by European and foreign investors in this country. They can no longer use logistical routes that were profit-making and lucrative. They cannot use the European currency, the euro, for settlements, while using euro as a reserve currency also brought out a lot of gains for the European economy. The outcome is known. Entire companies are closing down in Europe, glass manufacturing, chemicals, fertilizers manufacturing, agriculture. All these sectors have been sustaining considerable losses because they are now deprived of the Russian market. So the European and the German agriculture has been stripped of not only our energy, like gas is a very, very important feedstock for fertilizers, but they don't have the supply of our fertilizers at all, and they closed down, and the metallurgy also. And it's a knock-on effect. The automobile industry and others. This year, the growth of the Eurozone economy will be around 1%, according to our and international assessments, 1 point something, while the growth of the Russian economy last year was at 3.6%, and this year it's going to be at around 3.9 or even 4%. With respect to the processing sectors in Germany, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, the fall in processing sectors will be 4.6, the decline, and Russia will have the growth of 4.4%, while the processing industries here will grow by 8.1%. So, and besides, the Americans ban you to use to make use of the Russian market and capitalize on our cheap resources, while in the United States they have been creating conditions favorable for European and German investors. This is, to put it mildly, not a good model of allied behavior. Well, the Germans know that without me. I will not dig into details. Shall we create the conditions for those wishing to come back? We will not going to create a special set of conditions. We never dislodged anyone or ousted anyone. Our doors are open. The issue is different. The point is that over the past 2 years, many of the niches that became free because of the departure of the European partners are now being taken actively by companies from other countries, and at a whopping very rapid pace, and we never expected that. The import substitution is in progress, is ongoing with Russian brands. The number of these brands has increased manifold. So just simply coming back and occupying the previously abandoned niches would be a difficult thing to do, but at the same time, we will not place any obstacles, any special obstacles for that. It's not about us, it's about the political decisions made on the level of the European Commission and in separate member states, including Germany. It's not about us, it's about you. While I've been talking, I remembered one thing. When I lived and worked in Germany, a friend of mine, a pal of mine, told me a story. I'm not sure whether he's watching me. I ain't seen him for 30 years. I'm not sure what he's about. So he walked around Berlin. It was not a leisure activity, but he was on a mission, so to say. So he approached the bank of the Spree River, and he saw a German old man fishing. He asked him, "So, is your fishing okay? Do you have a lot of catch?" "No." There was a pause, and the pal of mine asked why. Another pause followed, and the German fisherman said, "It's the wind from the east." Coming from the east, and my pal responded, all the dirt, all the problems, all the filth comes from east. And the German fisherman spared a minute to think it over, and then he asked, "Are you a Pole?" My pal said, no, I'm not, I'm worse. And the German fisherman rose his eyebrows, looked blankly, and never said a thing. So why am I quoting this this story? Now, everything coming from the west, from the east, is better from what comes from the west. Look at the conditions established by your traditional partners in business environment. But our doors keep being open. With Germany for decades, we have had good relations. We had a great deal of mutual understanding, and the distinctive characteristic of German investors and investments was that they did not seek rapid gains, rapid profits. They wanted to play long term, and now Volkswagen has a lot of problems. Why have they left this market? They could have worked here, and they could have sold their cars here, and they would have supplied spare parts and components, getting wonderful revenue. We never pursued any non-market regulation measures, although you cannot call some non-market things a regulation. We never created any obstacles for our German friends, such as those pursued in other places like environmental investigations and other things. Now you can blame Volkswagen managers on anything, but you know, probably one should look at one's own mistakes. I'm not talking about the regulators on the governmental level making decisions, but now they blame the managers, the management, and the employees of Volkswagen that are on strike in droves. And, you know, their plants are closing down and people are fired, thousands of them. So for this not to happen, one should not be guided by political motives in economic decisions. And the main point I want to emphasize, you represent the Federal Republic of Germany. Why are you asking a question in English? Speak German. The main thing is the level of sovereignty. So you'd better speak German. We don't have the German interpretation. Oh, come on, don't deceive me. You wanted to add something. No, you also wanted to say something else. Marcus, give him a mic, please. This German gentleman wants to comment on upon something, to provide his feedback.
You know, as they would say, it's impossible to interpret.
Has just said that he was warned that there is no German interpreter available now, and I responded that it's not about an interpreter. The main thing is sovereignty. You know, I was at Mr. Schröder's place at his birthday party in Hanover, and it was a modest party, but a very decent one. Everybody spoke English, and even the girls' choir in Hanover performed in English. What a shame. So this is the point. This sovereignty level should be at your heart. So it starts from there. I would not like to start this discussion right
Pendientes de las palabras del presidente ruso Vladimir Putin, precisamente miramos a una última hora mientras hablaba sobre Alemania. Ojo, porque se acaba de producir un incidente en el mar Báltico. Varios medios alemanes, el diario Bild, la agencia DPA, informan de un incidente entre un helicóptero de la Bundeswehr, es decir, del ejército alemán, y un barco ruso en el mar Báltico. La agencia de prensa alemana en Bruselas ha enterado de que la tripulación del barco ruso ha disparado con munición de señales. El helicóptero estaba en camino para realizar un reconocimiento. La ministra de Asuntos Exteriores, Annalena Baerbock, ha mencionado el incidente al margen de una reunión de la OTAN, precisamente que está teniendo lugar en estos momentos en Bruselas, pero no ha dado ningún detalle. El motivo del vuelo de este helicóptero es el aumento de las patrullas en el mar Báltico. La propia Baerbock ha anunciado en esta reunión de la OTAN que iban a aumentar la vigilancia de oleoductos y cables de datos en el mar Báltico. La razón de esto son los supuestos sabotajes que están teniendo lugar en las últimas horas. En realidad, el uso de esta munición de señales solo es común en situaciones de emergencias. Baerbock ha señalado que siempre hay barcos en el mar Báltico que se dedican a evadir las sanciones debido a la guerra entre Rusia y Ucrania. Es la última hora en estos momentos. Varios medios hacen eco de esta información. Hablan de la tripulación de un barco ruso en el mar Báltico que ha disparado munición de señales contra un helicóptero militar alemán. Muy pendientes de esta última hora del desarrollo de esta noticia, mientras seguimos viendo al presidente ruso Vladimir Putin hablando sobre la economía, hablando también, en este caso, sobre el crecimiento de su economía. Está un 4%, lo compara con la eurozona, que dice que está creciendo al 1%, y además dando cuenta de la situación en torno al conflicto en Ucrania. El presidente ruso ha insistido en que los esfuerzos de Occidente para derrotar estratégicamente a su país, introduciendo sanciones contra él en medio de la campaña militar en Ucrania, ha fracasado. En el evento, en el foro económico Rusia llama del banco VTB, Putin ha señalado que estos acontecimientos han llevado a Rusia a fortalecer sus relaciones con socios más prometedores. También ha afirmado que la economía del país no solo se ha transformado, sino que ha mostrado signos de cambios estructurales gracias a la política equilibrada del gobierno y del Banco Central. Además, Putin ha elogiado el empleo en el país, afirmando que la tasa de desempleo se encuentra en un mínimo histórico y es mejor que muchos países occidentales. También ha hablado, eso sí, de la necesidad de contener la inflación en Rusia. Seguimos escuchando precisamente las declaraciones de Vladimir Putin.
If a globalization with the global West takes place, although the West is the global West isn't existent, its share in global GDP has been shrinking constantly, but the share of global South and the East keeps increasing. And according to the IMF and the World Bank data, the pace of growth of emerging and developing economies is 2 times higher than that of what they call developed countries. A twofold difference. And some of the economies have been growing at a stunning rate. Look at Ethiopia. Over the past 10 years, they have grown by 118 or 120%. It's phenomenal. It's unique. Bangladesh, 80-something% of growth. And many other economies in the global South and East have been growing similarly on similar levels. So we naturally look to those directions and places where we see a lot of growth and where we see a greater number of our prospective partners that pay no heed to the invectives from aside. And, you know, with respect to the threats to the third countries cooperating with us, you know, people from whom those threats emanate have been trained in Cambridge and Oxford. They have good education and a good background, but they should be smart and clever, but from judging by what they've been doing, I have doubts, or probably they might be well educated and clever and smart, but something prevents them from responding expeditiously to what has been happening globally. So probably this is snobbery, a haughty attitude. You know, they believe that they can do anything. But the world is changing, and the world is changing, and they cannot do whatever they want. So with their action, they have been adding pace to the multipolar world creation, which has become inevitable. More and more countries and international affairs and economic actors are aware that looking at the powerful markets with a high technological level is important, but partnering with these is insufficient at this point. So something more is needed. So I hope that at a certain point of time we normalize our relations with our Western partners, because first and foremost, because they will be interested in that, and we also have interest in that. So despite this possible, and I hope inevitable, process of normalization, a big deal, a big part of our volume with our today's friendly partners and countries will be in place, because it is inevitable.
Thank you very much indeed. Who goes next? Sector 7. Right, please be more proactive. Naila Nekrabova, member of the Board of Azerbaijan. Mr. President, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for being with us. Now, how do you see prospects for using the potential of the BRICS countries to create a joint or common digital infrastructure? Do you think it would be possible to come up with a common international digital payments system in this context? I wonder if independent developers who would like to be part of this project could count on your support. Thank you very much.
This is a very interesting topic and very important. We try to pay attention to it with our colleagues from BRICS, not just because someone is creating problems for us. They are serious and they impede our activities if we're speaking about settlements. However, the main thing is that the world economy is developing. Our relations are developing. I was answering to a question of your colleague, and I've just said that we are developing relations with big countries, big economies. The number of partners increases, and everyone wants secure ways of settlements and economic relations. Everyone wants to use modern ways to implement settlements, to reduce costs, to make it more reliable, to make the international system more reliable. This means the use of modern technologies, digital technologies. This is what we are going to do without any doubt. We are talking not only about the creation of digital settlement systems. In the context of BRICS, we proposed to our partners, and they supported it in general, to create a digital investment platform. And settlements in digital currencies will be part of it. What is the way that we are following? We are going to create a working group on the basis of BRICS Development Bank. We are currently creating it. We spoke about this in Kazan with representatives from China, from India, Brazil, with all the partners. And everyone agrees. We want to create a digital platform that would allow us to invest into promising, growing markets of South Asia and Africa. And it will be a reliable way of investment that would be protected from inflation, and that will allow to the central banks to react in a flexible and rapid way to the processes happening in our association. So if we see that there is a lack of investment, we could issue the necessary digital instruments. If there is a accession of it, we could take something from it. So this is an instrument that can be easily created. We just need to agree about the directions of its development and the investments into the countries or projects. I think, and our experts suggested, it would be very interesting for those countries who are going to create this instrument, as well as for those who are going to use it. Meaning that the developing markets of Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia need this investment. If we find good, promising common projects, invest in them, and then receive the return on this, on the work of these projects, the instrument is going to be very reliable and promising. That is why we're interested in attracting the widest circle of friends and those of like mind. This also goes for one of our promising partners as Azerbaijan.
Follow up. Recently, Mr. Trump haven't made it to its White House. You may not know that we have our own White House where we make good decisions, whereas the White House in Washington is a place where some different decisions are made. Now, he said that if BRICS members do not use the dollar, he would introduce 100% duties against all these countries. So this is the first threat against states, the first threat of this kind. Previously, the Americans went after individual banks or companies, but that was a first, stating that the states would be punished and their products would be subject to 100% duties. This is a first from the president-elect. Now, we know that Americans are very sensitive about this because the strength of America is in its dollar. And this is where money is invested. So, but for the dollar, with its positions, the American economy will go under with its huge debt, and we know the dollars create huge revenues for banks. Now, how do you assess this step of the president-elect? Whether this would undermine the trust in the U.S. and their economy and their financial system, whether this would make BRICS countries and other countries to flee from dollar even faster, or in trying to create some new formats and new approaches?
First of all, I'll agree that the use of dollar as a world currency gives the US a lot of money. In the last 10 years, they received $10 trillion, just like that, from the skies, for the fact that the dollar is used as the reserve currency. On the basis of placement in their banks, $10 trillion, it means that they consume more than they produce, which is very important. In fact, thanks to the dollar, the US continue to exploit other economies of the world for their own benefit. Many people do not think about it, but this is important, and I'll agree with you on that. The second thing, you said that the President-elect Trump threatened that those who will not use dollar will introduce duties or sanctions. As I understand, he didn't say it like that. I understand that when we speak about the US, it provokes some certain reaction. Well, as far as according to what I've seen, well, I don't have much time to see, to watch. But I said that if someone wants to restrict the use of dollar.
Pendientes de las palabras del presidente ruso Vladimir Putin, hablando en este evento del banco VTB, hablando sobre la economía de Rusia, también hablando sobre la derrota estratégica que han intentado implementar contra su país. Precisamente comenzamos el informativo hablando del presidente ruso Vladimir Putin. Ha insistido este miércoles en que los esfuerzos de Occidente para derrotar estratégicamente a su país, introduciendo sanciones contra él en medio de la campaña militar en Ucrania, han fracasado. En su intervención en el foro económico Rusia llama del banco VTB, Putin ha señalado que estos acontecimientos han llevado a Rusia a fortalecer sus relaciones con socios más prometedores. También afirmó que la economía del país no solo se ha transformado, sino que ha mostrado signos de cambios estructurales gracias a la política equilibrada del gobierno y del Banco Central. Además, Putin elogió el empleo en el país, afirmando que la tasa de desempleo se encuentra en un mínimo histórico y que es mejor que muchos países occidentales. No obstante, también ha destacado la necesidad de contener la inflación y garantizar la eficacia de los gastos gubernamentales. También miramos al canciller alemán. Olaf Scholz ha declarado este miércoles que el envío de tropas alemanas a Ucrania no es un tema que pueda discutirse, decía literalmente. No se trata de enviar soldados alemanes a Ucrania y así seguirá siendo. Es lo que afirmaba el canciller en una sesión del Parlamento alemán. Dice que el apoyo de Alemania a Ucrania va a continuar y que además no hay señales de que Rusia abandone sus planes. Por eso dice que es importante que Alemania siga apoyándolo en su independencia y soberanía. Dice que puede contar con Alemania y que es el país que más recursos ha movilizado. Sin embargo, al preguntarle sobre las tropas, dice que para él las tropas terrestres no son una opción en esta situación de guerra. Cuando se le preguntó si el personal militar alemán formará parte de una misión de mantenimiento de la paz en Ucrania, Scholz señaló que no es apropiado especular sobre lo que sucederá después de que termine el conflicto en Ucrania. También miramos a la portavoz del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores de Rusia, María Zaharova, ha declarado este miércoles que es demasiado pronto para discutir el plan del presidente electo de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, y su asesor para el conflicto en Ucrania, Keith Kellogg, para resolver esta crisis, ya que es un documento no oficial. En una conferencia de prensa, Zaharova ha reafirmado la disposición de Moscú a escuchar diferentes propuestas para la paz entre Rusia y Ucrania. Escuchamos precisamente a María Zaharova, responde así al plan de paz de Donald Trump.
Instead, Ukraine is turning into a terrorist state. At the very least, it is something we can say about the regime at the helm there. The Ukrainian Nazis, with a blatant complicity of the West, are not ceasing their terrorist activities against their own residents and against Russia. On the 26th of November, in Novaya Kakhovka, Kherson region, 5 civilians were killed and 21 wounded as a result of terrorist shelling of a bus. A massive drone attack was repelled on the 27th of November in Krasnodar region. In Slavyansk and Kuban, a woman was injured by the wreckage of a destroyed drone on 27th of November. Over the waters of the Black Sea and the territory of Crimea, 25 Ukrainian UAVs were intercepted. The Ukraine terrorists fired 345 munitions and 154 UAVs at populated areas in the Belgrade region as a result of drone attacks on civilian cars.
Además, ha subrayado que en tal caso Rusia seguirá insistiendo en el respeto de sus intereses y de los motivos por los que se inició la campaña. Los comentarios de Zaharova se produjeron después de que Reuters informara que el plan de Trump y Kellogg para la solución del conflicto incluye ciertas concesiones territoriales por parte de Kiev y la cancelación de la solicitud de Ucrania de ser miembro de la OTAN. Precisamente María Zaharova ha respondido a las afirmaciones del secretario general de la OTAN, Mark Rutte, sobre posibles negociaciones desde una posición de fuerza para Ucrania. La vocera recordó que Rutte dijo que hay que asegurarse de que la ayuda militar vaya a Kiev para garantizar que Ucrania, cuando decida entablar conversaciones de paz, lo haga desde una posición de fuerza. Decía la propia Zaharova que no es lógico y que es una estupidez absoluta que cuando Kiev ha sido presionado por británicos y por estadounidenses, se ha prohibido asimismo a nivel legislativo negociar. Dice además que el propio Zelensky dice constantemente que no imaginan ninguna negociación. Miramos también al secretario general de la OTAN, Mark Rutte, habla sobre la tecnología nuclear y de misiles de Rusia. Alerta, dice que está fluyendo hacia Corea del Norte. Habla de un alineamiento entre Rusia, China, Corea del Norte, Irán. Escuchamos a Mark Rutte.
These systems discussed at the NATO-Ukraine Council, and maybe there were any decisions on this issue. Thank you.
No, this was absolutely discussed. As you know, we try to do everything we can to help Ukraine in making sure they can fight back what the Russians are doing with their full onslaught on Ukraine unprovoked. And at the same time, we have to make sure that whatever air defense we can give them is being supplied to Ukraine. This is happening over the last 2.5 years. All the first 1,000 days of this awful full onslaught of Russia, we have been able to provide many air defense systems into Ukraine. And now there is a specific need on the energy infrastructure, because what Russia is trying to do is to weaponize winter again in this fight against Ukraine. So this was discussed last night. As you know, in the world, we do not have a sort of overflow of supply of air defense systems. So that means that you always have to make sure that you prioritize. But there was a clear agreement on the table last night that to help Ukraine, particularly with its infrastructure, has to be a priority. And I'm confident that allies will follow up in the coming days and weeks in making sure that whatever they can supply to Ukraine will be supplied.
Precisamente el propio Rutte hablaba sobre la situación en el frente de batalla en Ucrania. Decía que Rusia está avanzando a lo largo de toda la línea del frente en Ucrania, lo que afirmaba el secretario general de la OTAN en una conferencia de prensa tras una reunión de ministros de Asuntos Exteriores de la OTAN en Bruselas. Rutte, eso sí, dice que van a hacer todo lo posible para ayudar a Ucrania y asegurarse de que pueda
This
contraatacar. Escuchamos.
Systems discussed at the NATO-Ukraine Council, and maybe there were any decisions on this issue. Thank you.
No, this was absolutely discussed. As you know, we try to do everything we can to help Ukraine in making sure they can fight back what the Russians are doing with their full onslaught on Ukraine unprovoked. And at the same time, we have to make sure that whatever air defense we can give them is being supplied to Ukraine. This is happening over the last 2.5 years. All the first 1,000 days of this awful full onslaught of Russia, we have been able to provide many air defense systems into Ukraine. And now there is a specific need on the energy infrastructure, because what Russia is trying to do is to weaponize winter again in this fight against Ukraine. So this was discussed last night. As you know, in the world, we do not have a sort of overflow of supply of air defense systems. So that means that you always have to make sure that you prioritize. But there was a clear agreement on the table last night that to help Ukraine, particularly with its infrastructure, has to be a priority. And I'm confident that allies will follow up in the coming days and weeks in making sure that whatever they can supply to Ukraine will be supplied.
Decía Rutte que Rusia está avanzando a lo largo de toda la línea del frente, añadiendo que el frente se está moviendo obstinadamente hacia Occidente. Repitió su llamamiento a los países de la alianza para que aumenten el suministro de armas a Kiev. También miramos al secretario de Estado de Estados Unidos. Precisamente, Antony Blinken hablaba sobre la situación en Ucrania. Dice que están dejando la mejor baza posible para Donald Trump. Escuchamos a Blinken.
If Ukraine determines that it needs to continue the fight, we want to make sure it has what it needs to continue that fight. The money, the munitions, the mobilized forces. If it chooses to engage in a negotiation, and that assumes, of course, that Putin and Russia have any intent of doing that, then again, we want to make sure it's from a position of strength. And from my perspective, I think what I'm trying to do, not just with Ukraine, but across the board, is to give the incoming administration the strongest hand to play in all of these.
Pendientes también de la OTAN, del propio Donald Trump, que está pensando en nombrar un nuevo secretario de Defensa. Hacemos una pausa, 2 minutos, y les contamos todo enseguida en Negocios Televisión.
Milito y Cecilia Peña lo están petando en redes sociales. Contadnos qué es Viking Speed y Nice Green.
Tú eres súper fan nuestro, bien lo sabes. Mira, ya tenemos distribuidor en Japón, Noruega, Suecia. Yo alucino cuando veo mi producto japonés o noruego o búlgaro. Pero es que eso es poco. Además, mira,
Próximamente en Colombia.
¿Colombia?
Sí, nos vamos a América.
A hacer las Américas. Pero cuéntanos, Ceci, ¿qué es Viking Speed?
Javi, tú que eres fan, sabes perfectamente que en Internet está toda la información para todo el público.
Pues efectivamente soy súper fan de Viking Speed y Nice Green. A mí me soluciona la vida porque me vale para todo.
Bueno, para todo no vale.
¿Para qué no vale, Milito?
Oye, mira, por ejemplo, yo que para peinarse. Mira qué pelo trae.
Pensamos que la economía mundial no se encamina hacia una recesión inminente y vemos señales de que nos encontramos más ante una rotación que ante un desplome. Bajo esta coyuntura, estos son los 3 factores a monitorizar en este cuarto trimestre del 2024. En primer lugar, los datos de los últimos meses indican que la inflación por fin se ha controlado en su mayor parte y que los riesgos de esta inflación del año pasado se han aplacado. En segundo lugar, vemos que la dirección está clara. Nos encaminamos hacia un ciclo de nuevos estímulos monetarios y públicos que tratarán de amortiguar los posibles baches de la economía. En este entorno, pensamos que los valores de mediana capitalización de Estados Unidos y la deuda pública de los mercados emergentes son 2 de las áreas que registrarán un buen comportamiento. Y por último, creemos que nos encontramos en la fase media final del ciclo y que, pese a la gran incógnita que supone la complejidad de los riesgos geopolíticos, lo más probable es que nos dirijamos hacia un aterrizaje suave.
Silver Gold Patrimonio nace en 2018 con el objetivo de innovar en el mercado de los metales preciosos de inversión, ofreciendo nuevas alternativas para que cualquier persona, familia o empresa pueda entrar en el fantástico mundo de los metales de inversión de forma sencilla y acompañada por consultores expertos en el sector. Silver Gold Patrimonio quiere avanzar contigo.
Seguimos en Negocios Televisión mirando de nuevo al secretario general de la OTAN, Mark Rutte, ha dicho este miércoles que los Estados miembros implementarán un conjunto de medidas para contrarrestar las amenazas híbridas de Rusia. En declaraciones realizadas después de la reunión de los ministros de Asuntos Exteriores de la Alianza, Rutte dijo que la OTAN aumentará el intercambio de inteligencia, programará más ejercicios, impulsará la ciberdefensa y la protección de la infraestructura crítica e implementará acciones más duras contra la flota paralela de barcos exportadores de petróleo de Rusia. El secretario general de la OTAN alerta sobre un incremento hostil, una postura cada vez más agresiva por parte de Rusia. Escuchamos.
Today, ministers discuss Russia's increasingly aggressive posture, as well as its escalating campaign of hostile actions in NATO countries. We have seen a steep increase of these attacks, and we must hold the perpetrators to account. Both Russia and China have tried to destabilize our countries and divide our societies with acts of sabotage, cyber attacks, and energy blackmail. So today, ministers agreed a set of proactive measures to counter Russia's hostile and cyber activities. These include enhanced intelligence exchange, more exercises, better protection of critical infrastructure, improved cyber defense, and tougher action against Russia's shadow fleet of oil exporting ships.
También hablaba sobre la situación en la guerra de Ucrania. El secretario de Estado de Estados Unidos, Ante Blinken, mandaba un mensaje directo para Vladimir Putin. Decía que el artículo 5 es el motivo de la disuasión en Ucrania y decía que es el motivo por el que Rusia no se ha atrevido a atacar a ningún país de la OTAN. Escuchamos la advertencia de Blinken.
NATO came together after 2 world wars as part of a series of institutions that were built to try to ensure that we never had another global conflagration. And what's so unique about NATO is the compact that each of its members make, that an attack on one is an attack on all. What's so powerful about that is it tells any would-be aggressor, if you go after one of us, you're going to have to deal with all of us. That is the most powerful deterrent to war breaking out in the first place. That is the most powerful deterrent against aggression. It's not a surprise that Russia has not attacked directly.
Precisamente en Estados Unidos miramos al presidente electo Donald Trump, y es que según se informa, el equipo de transición del presidente electo está considerando discretamente alternativas a Hegseth para dirigir el Pentágono, incluido el gobernador de Florida, Ron DeSantis, y la senadora de Iowa, Johnny Ernst. El candidato de Donald Trump para secretario de Defensa, el presentador del programa de fin de semana de Fox News, continúa siendo perseguido por acusaciones sobre su pasado, lo que potencialmente hace menos posible su confirmación y divide a los medios de derecha sobre sus perspectivas, mientras su candidatura enfrenta un día absolutamente crítico. Este miércoles, Trump parece decidido a conseguir a su hombre, un veterano de guerra con un historial distinguido, pero poca experiencia administrativa. Se arriesga a una pelea con los senadores republicanos en el Capitolio. Volvemos a mirar a la OTAN. En este caso hablamos del ministro de Asuntos Exteriores de Luxemburgo, Xavier Bettel. Se ha pronunciado este martes contra la adhesión de Ucrania a la OTAN. Dice que cree que la adhesión de la membresía de la OTAN traerá tensiones nuevamente. Es lo que afirmaba en una reunión de ministros de Exteriores del bloque militar en Bruselas. Según el alto funcionario, si el país eslavo se convierte en miembro de la alianza, existe la opción de que inmediatamente surjan más conflictos. Antes de esta reunión, Ucrania rechazó cualquier garantía de seguridad que no sea formar parte del bloque. El ministro de Asuntos Exteriores de Kiev dijo además en un comunicado que no aceptará ninguna alternativa, sustituto ni similares para la membresía plena de Ucrania en la OTAN. Hablamos ahora del presidente serbio Aleksandar Vučić. Ha realizado unas declaraciones en respuesta a la decisión de Estados Unidos de que Ucrania pueda atacar con misiles ATACMS en territorio ruso. Vučić, considerado como un aliado cercano del Kremlin, afirmó que el presidente ruso Vladimir Putin habla en serio sobre las amenazas de un ataque nuclear. Aseguró que Putin no dudaría en usar armas nucleares si la seguridad y el poder militar de su país estuvieran amenazados y si no tuviera otra opción. Decía literalmente, había 10 pasos para llegar al desastre total. Acabamos de cruzar el 9º. Dice además que quien se crea que Putin está fingiendo cuando habla de que podría usar armas nucleares es que no ha visto a Putin en su vida. Y además añadió que en Occidente dicen que Putin va de farol, pero que él le conoce como pocos y que está seguro de que si llega a estar en peligro la seguridad de Moscú y de sus fuerzas, si no ve otra salida, dice que no va a dudar ni un solo momento. Por último, miramos a Estados Unidos, que ha lanzado este miércoles su primera unidad de la Fuerza Espacial en Japón para mejorar la defensa y la disuasión de la alianza entre las amenazas de Rusia, China y Corea del Norte. Las fuerzas espaciales de Estados Unidos en Japón se activaron durante una ceremonia celebrada en la base aérea de Yokota, situada al oeste de Tokio, en la capital de Japón. Se trata de un componente de campo de las fuerzas espaciales de Estados Unidos en el Indo-Pacífico y está subordinada a las fuerzas de Estados Unidos en Japón. La nueva unidad militar estadounidense con base en Japón reforzará las capacidades de vigilancia especial y de alerta de misiles en el país anfitrión, según informaba la agencia de noticias japonesa Kyodo News, y garantizará una coordinación fluida con el Grupo de Operaciones Espaciales de la Fuerza Aérea Japonesa. Es la nueva base espacial de Estados Unidos a las puertas de Rusia, de China y de Corea del Norte. Nueva base militar espacial, en este caso en Japón. Pendientes de la actualidad geopolítica, vamos también al análisis, mirando a las declaraciones por parte de María Zakharova sobre el plan de Donald Trump, también pendientes, en este caso, de las líneas del frente de la OTAN, advirtiendo de avances importantes por parte de Rusia. Vamos a analizar estas cuestiones de la mano de Adrián Celaya, presidente de ¿Qué Group?, que ya está con nosotros. ¿Qué tal? Adrián, buenas tardes.
Hola, encantado de estar con usted.
Bueno, pues encantados un día más de tenerte por aquí, mirando la tensión en Ucrania, por supuesto, con todos mirando a lo que sucede en Corea del Sur, pero te quiero preguntar antes de nada por la última hora, la contábamos hace apenas unos minutos. Un barco ruso habría disparado a un avión militar, a un avión del ejército militar de Alemania en el mar Báltico. Hablan de sabotajes, de estos presuntos sabotajes que están teniendo lugar en el Báltico, que están teniendo lugar, pues habla de Finlandia, de Suecia, de Noruega. Al parecer iba un avión de la Bundeswehr, del ejército alemán, y ha sido disparado con señales por parte de un barco ruso. Te quiero preguntar por esto porque vemos que aumenta la tensión. Decía Scholz, eso sí, hace unos minutos, que descarta enviar tropas a Ucrania.
Bueno, la verdad es que estamos en un momento aparentemente de máxima tensión entre los dos bloques, o si se quiere, entre Rusia y la OTAN en general. Un momento en el que se están jugando de alguna forma todas las cartas, ¿no? Y frente a posibles movimientos de escalada, pues también hay movimientos de transmitir lo que podrían ser las repercusiones de la escalada. Esto lo hizo Rusia a través del lanzamiento del misil Oresnik, que claramente era una transmisión era una demostración de fuerza, de una transmisión de cómo podría desencadenarse una escalada en el lanzamiento de misiles por parte de la OTAN. Pero también seguramente estos movimientos, todo lo que está pasando en Corea, lo que está pasando en Siria, responden a una estrategia de apretar el acelerador por parte de estas fuerzas digamos en la OTAN, por sintetizar, que parece que tienen una importante precaución con respecto a lo que puede suceder a partir de la llegada de Donald Trump al poder. Y aparentemente están apretando todas las clavijas con el fin de que o bien hacer estallar el conflicto antes de esa fecha o bien que estén los puntos candentes lo suficientemente avanzados, lo suficientemente encendidos como para hacerle muy difícil a Donald Trump la marcha atrás.
Bueno, pues en medio de esta escalada también hoy hablaba María Zakharova, la portavoz del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores, sobre este plan de paz de Donald Trump, con su enviado especial Keith Kellogg. Se habla ya de concesiones territoriales por parte de Ucrania, pero Zakharova dice que es demasiado pronto, que no hay ningún documento, ningún plan oficial. Quiero saber cómo valoras esta postura por parte de Moscú y sobre todo estos detalles que vamos conociendo poco a poco del plan de Donald Trump.
Bueno, yo creo que la posición de Sájarova es perfectamente lógica, ¿no? Nosotros siempre hemos dicho que, claro, dentro de una estrategia de guerra de desgaste, este es el momento en el que la negociación, desde un punto de vista en principio militar, la negociación es más interesante para Ucrania y menos interesante para Rusia, ¿no? Después de 2 años de guerra de desgaste sin avances territoriales importantes, porque el objetivo de la guerra de desgaste es que haya avances territoriales, pero no de forma inmediata, sino precisamente como una consecuencia posterior del desgaste del otro ejército, ¿no? Entonces, ese desgaste ya se está evidenciando, ahora están empezando a acelerarse ese movimiento, esos avances territoriales de Rusia, y por eso, claro, sería el peor momento para la negociación por parte de Rusia, en el que todo lo que ha invertido en el desgaste, en esa guerra, tanto en pérdidas de la otra parte como en minimizar las suyas, pues quedaría sin rentabilizar si se abre ahora mismo una mesa de negociación. Y al contrario, precisamente por las mismas razones, en sentido inverso, es el mejor momento para que Ucrania intente una negociación, ahora que está a punto de sufrir el colapso de su ejército y probablemente un colapso social importante. Si lo vemos en datos muy claros, como son las cifras de deserción, como ahora desde la propia Ucrania se están reconociendo hasta qué punto se están disparando las cifras de deserción. Se habla de 60.000 encausados por deserción en Ucrania, la cada vez mayor agresividad que tienen que utilizar para reclutar personas, la cada vez menor experiencia de los que reclutan, las rendiciones, los abandonos de puestos. Es todo un síntoma del inicio de un colapso que, por supuesto, va a suponer un avance significativo cara a la mesa de negociación para Rusia y, al contrario, un auténtico desastre, vamos a decir, político para Ucrania. Entonces, lo lógico es que en este momento Ucrania o la OTAN, si se quiere, que intenten convencer a Rusia para negociar y que Rusia intente retrasar ese proceso, lógicamente. Porque unos meses pueden ser claves en este sentido. Y no es lo mismo tampoco abrir ahora mismo una mesa de negociación que abrirla dentro de 2 meses cuando Donald Trump llega a la presidencia, o que si entonces se inicia esas negociaciones para cuando se ponen los datos encima unos meses después, pues ya la situación en el terreno haya cambiado totalmente.
Precisamente, Adrián, de esta debilidad del ejército ucraniano ha hablado el secretario general de la OTAN, Rutte, que ha sorprendido con sus declaraciones. Dice que Rusia está avanzando en todas las líneas del frente. Ayer ya hablaba un poquito en este sentido, pero hoy ha sido más tajante que nunca. Muestra, bueno, pues que la situación, desde luego, es el invierno más difícil para Ucrania desde 2022. Lo decían tanto Rutte como Blinken.
Sí, algo que ya era conocido, pero que por primera vez parece que se está reconociendo de forma abierta, ¿no? Bueno, entonces lo que hay que pensar es cuáles son las razones de que se empiece a reconocer. Y una de ellas puede ser precisamente animar a la escalada, ¿no? Animar a estos movimientos, estos tanteos que se están haciendo desde distintos países europeos destinados o planteando el desplazamiento de tropas de la OTAN a Ucrania, que sería quizás la única forma de poder recomponer, aunque sea parcialmente, la fuerza de un ejército ucraniano que se está deshaciendo de día en día, ¿no? Y la otra razón puede ser, de alguna forma, y esto es lo que se está diciendo repetidamente con respecto a las declaraciones del gobierno ucraniano, que ellos mismos necesitan ir creando un ambiente interno, un ambiente mediático interno para hacer posible esa negociación cuando se abra. Porque, claro, después de muchos mensajes triunfalistas y con alas muy importantes dentro del ejército de carácter muy extremista, neonazi, si se quiere, pues los riesgos de un enfrentamiento interno ante la apertura de cualquier proceso de negociación pueden ser muy importantes.
Bueno, pues pendientes de estos avances por parte de Rusia. Para terminar, te quiero preguntar por la situación en Corea del Sur, uno de los principales aliados de Estados Unidos, también de Ucrania. Se habla de un impeachment y, bueno, lo que desde luego ha traslucido, lo que desde luego se ha visto es una tensión brutal, ¿no? Te quiero preguntar por esto, ¿cómo calificas, cómo valoras lo que ha pasado en las últimas horas en Corea del Sur?
Bueno, es muy pronto para poder hablar probablemente con suficiente seguridad, pero los datos apuntan a que ha sido al menos un intento aparentemente fallido de poner en marcha, digamos, un régimen dictatorial o semidictatorial en Corea del Sur con el fin de lanzar a Corea del Sur a la guerra. Es decir, tanto el origen de estos movimientos como los ataques contra la oposición, acusándoles de cómplices de Corea del Norte, etcétera, pues parecen apuntar claramente en esa dirección. Entonces, si esto se confirma, tendríamos que inscribirlo en este contexto, que incluye también lo que está sucediendo en Siria, de una OTAN tremendamente preocupada por una guerra que está perdiendo en Ucrania y que ante esas incertidumbres frente a la nueva presidencia de Trump está intentando apretar el acelerador donde puede. Entonces, uno de estos puntos que está intentando o que ha hecho ya, digamos, encender ha sido Siria y probablemente estaban intentando lo mismo en Corea. Vamos a ver, porque parece que este movimiento político está siendo fallido, pero bueno, en los próximos días iremos teniendo las ideas más claras y más concretas.
Bueno, pues pendientes de lo que vaya ocurriendo en Corea del Sur, también por supuesto mirando a Ucrania, a Siria, muchos frentes abiertos antes de que llegue Donald Trump a la Casa Blanca. Muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros, Adrián. Un placer como siempre. Muy buenas tardes.
Bien. Gracias a vosotros.
Nosotros terminamos en este caso contándoles una última hora. Nos vamos hacia Georgia. El líder de la oposición georgiana ha sido golpeado hasta quedarse inconsciente y llevado por la policía. Hablamos de Nika Engarabia, el líder del partido Coalición para el Cambio de Georgia. Según apunta la agencia Reuters, ha sido golpeado hasta quedar inconsciente y arrastrado a un coche de detención por la policía en Tbilisi. Esto ocurre mientras los georgianos inundan las calles para protestar contra la decisión del gobierno para congelar las negociaciones para la membresía de la Unión Europea, una medida que está convirtiendo las tensiones políticas en una crisis en toda regla. Llevamos días, semanas con protestas en Georgia. El líder de la oposición acaba de ser golpeado y detenido por la policía. Pendientes también de Georgia, mirando a los mercados. Está hablando Christine Lagarde, sigue hablando, por cierto, el presidente ruso Vladimir Putin. Hacemos una pausa, un par de minutos. Enseguida volvemos con todo Rolling Stocks de la mano de Manuel Velázquez.
Silver Gold Patrimonio nace en 2018 con el objetivo de innovar en el mercado de los metales preciosos de inversión, ofreciendo nuevas alternativas para que cualquier persona, familia o empresa pueda entrar en el fantástico mundo de los metales de inversión de forma sencilla y acompañada por consultores expertos en el sector. Silver Gold Patrimonio quiere avanzar contigo.
Mudarte de ciudad es un gran cambio y alquilar tu casa puede parecer arriesgado. ¿Estará tu vivienda protegida? Con SEAC, olvídate de preocupaciones. Nosotros garantizamos tu renta pase lo que pase. Disfruta de tu nueva etapa con total confianza. Alquila tranquilo. SEAC responde.
En el corazón de Madrid, descubre los Montes de Galicia, donde la tradición gallega se encuentra con la innovación culinaria. Saborea nuestros mariscos frescos, carnes jugosas y postres caseros. Todo preparado con ingredientes de la más alta calidad. Disfruta de una experiencia gastronómica única en un ambiente acogedor y elegante. Los Montes de Galicia, donde cada comida es una celebración. ¡Te esperamos!
Silver Gold Patrimonio nace en 2018 con el objetivo de innovar en el mercado de